Inter-University Debate airs every Thursday on Civic Space TV from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. I'm your moderator for today. My name is Lake Genda Fasi. I'm an advocate, a lecturer, and a tax consultant. Today we are hosting Nkumba University. Nkumba University made it to the quarterfinals. So since we are holding the internal debates for the universities in preparation for the inter-university debate, we are hosting Nkumba University today, which is among the universities that made it to the quarterfinals. Last week, we hosted Cavendish University. There are several other universities that also made it to the quarterfinals. We have Makerere University, Kabale University, IUIU, Uganda Pentecostal University, Makerere University Business School, Kampala International University, Mbara University of Science and Technology, Uganda Christian University, Cavendish University, and Busitema University. So I would like to congratulate Nkumba University upon making it to the quarterfinals, which is the stage we are in right now. Our topic for today is digital rights, emerging technologies, and climate justice. What is the role of the youth? This debate is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. Not wasting time, let me introduce the panelists for today's debate. All the panelists are from Nkumba University. First, let me start with the gentleman who represented Nkumba University during the inter-university debate and successfully drove Nkumba University into the quarterfinals, and that is Garang Lester. Garang, you're welcome. You can introduce yourself.
Hello, Fancy. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, listeners, viewers, and all of us, the panelists. My name is Garang Quote. Lester is my name. I am a legal scholar in my third year at Nkumba University. I'm also an astute debater. I train debating, and I also adjudicate debating. I also do a little writing, and I'm enthusiastic about rights, access to things that make us better people, and safety generally. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Garang. We are happy to have you for this internal debate for Nkumba University in preparation for the inter-university quarterfinals debate. Our second panelist for today is called Hopekins. Ainomujuni. She's also from Nkumba University. Win, you're welcome to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam. My name is Hopekins Ainomujuni, and I am currently the debate president at Nkumba University. I am a legal scholar in my third year, and things are how they're doing all this emerging technology. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Hopkins, for being on this panel today. Our third panelist is called Ssebina Sharif. Sharif, you're welcome to introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you so much, Fancy. My name is Ssebina Sharif, and I am a third year law student at Nkumba University. I am a former president law society at Nkumba University. I am an avid debater, political scientist, and I hope that you're going to have an insightful moment while debating the above theme. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sharif. We are happy to have you here, and we know we will have a good engagement. Our fourth panelist is called Amanya Abdul. He is going to join us in a bit, and we will ask him to introduce himself as well when he joins us. But let us kickstart our debate for today. So, as earlier mentioned, our topic is digital rights, emerging technologies, and climate justice. What is the role of the youth? I'm going to give the panelists an opportunity to give their introductory statements, and I'll start with Garang. Garang, it's time for you to give us your introductory statement to this debate. and please feature what you understand by digital rights in your introduction. Garang, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Fancy, and my co-panelists. A very interesting topic to have at a time like now when so many things are happening and so many things are appearing so definitive of our very future, or sometimes our very existence as human beings on this planet in and of itself. Digital rights, I'll speak about digital rights on 5 different but related levels. When you talk about digital rights, to me, it has a lot to do with the ability to use computers, to use modern gadgets, and most interestingly, to use internet-based activities, to access them and to participate actually in them. And that critically, like I said, I'll speak about it in 5 several levels, and by the end of those 5, maybe we shall have a picture of what digital rights are and how I understand them as a person, and how in the entire discussion I'll always refer to them in that context. So, like I said, digital rights have a lot to do with our ability to use computers or computer-based services or activities, internet-based activities, and also participate in them and also engage with them. So with them comes the question of access in terms of how do we access computers, or how do we access computer-based services or computer-based events. If an event is entirely online, like what we went through during the COVID period, what would be the fraction of people that can access such events? For example, we had a long period of online education. How many people were able to access online education? How many people participated in online education? Because this was solely computer-based, internet-based. It was happening remotely. And so question of access comes in when I hear about digital rights. And then secondly, we also want to talk about safety on the internet. For example, if you want to engage virtually, how safe are you? Because with the rise in internet and the rise in computer use, there's come with it the exposure to so many people that we even never meet, so many people with various motives, and so many people who would want to do so many things visually, and these things, even if they cannot, in most cases, they may not necessarily harm us physically, but there is a lot of emotional toil that we go through when we engage online. So there is a question of online safety that comes with it, and for those who have heard about trafficking, those who have heard about scamming, and those who have heard about issues of copyrights, these are things that have come also with the use of computer and the use of internet, and that is the second thing I would also want to be understood when we talk about digital rights. So how safe are we online? Because we have a right to safety wherever we are, but how safe can we be if we are online or if we're using computers? And thirdly, it's the ability to use internet, the ability to use computers and other gadgets to access solely online and computer-based services. It's another thing that is very, very critical when we talk about digital rights. How many people are able to shop, for example, online? How many people are able to attend an event like this, a dialogue that is solely online like this? Or how many people are able to access online media platforms? For example, we are streaming live on Civic Space TV. How many people can access that? How many people know how to use that? So that is something critical about digital rights. It's something that I also feel is very important. So the ability to use, and also related to the ability to use, is the use in and of itself. So what do we use these things for? Because if I have a smartphone, right now I have a smartphone, I am attending via my laptop. So what am I using them for? What am I using my smartphone for? What am I using my laptop for? And what is another person using them for? There are these jokes that we go through when we are having our casual conversations, that if your phone cannot make for you money, it can always take away your money. So you have to feed the phone, you're buying data, you are charging it, and the same thing. So that's how much you put into your phone. But how much can you use that same phone to become your library, for example, to become your gateway to online events that can add a thing into your life as a person. For example, if I can attend a dialogue like this on my laptop, that can be some benefit that accrues to me in as much as how I use my gadget is concerned, or how I want to use my internet is concerned, or how I want to use my online presence is concerned. And lastly, the issues of copyright. I hinted on it when I talked about safety. Copyright. We do a lot of things, we share a lot of things online, because right now we have access to computers, we have access to smartphones, we have access to internet to some extent. So we do so many of our creative stuff and place it online there for people to engage with. So we have a right to our intellectual property. So how safe is our copy when we place it online? So there comes in an issue of copyright. So on those 5 levels, I believe I have made a critical overview of what digital rights entail and what exactly we would want to deal with them. And then emerging technologies. You see, of course, your question was on my understanding of digital rights. So I don't know whether the next question comes with emerging technologies, or I should just even hinge on them as I do my opening remarks. I would like to be guided on that. But that is briefly what I understand with digital rights. Fancy?
Okay, Garang, we will have you again on that at a later time.
Well,
So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for giving us a detailed introduction and definition of digital rights according to your understanding. So let me bring Hopekins into the discussion. So Hopekins, it's time for you to give us your introductory remarks. And please, in your introductory remarks, feature what you understand by emerging technologies.
Thank you very much. As I earlier introduced myself, my name is Hopekins, Ainomujuni. I am going to basically tell you what I understand by emerging technologies. So emerging technologies are basically these technologies that their development or their application is realized or is emerging from a non-existent background or obscurity. For example, I'm going to give you the historical background of the world, of the globe, from the old age to the new age, where the old age we were using, there was no transport, there was horse truck transport where people were using horses to transport themselves, but now currently we have the vehicles that can do the transport. And now with the emerging technology, we have even eased the transportation from vehicles, and we have enhanced it to aeroplanes and the underground trains. So that is how the technology keeps emerging. And then this technology, when it is supposed to emerge because of the freedom of people to be able to make research, to freedom of people to be able to express themselves or their minds in order to put the practicability of this technology into place. And basically, when people are able to have that freedom, they're able to bring upon their minds. For example, the era of compact disc in the Middle Age changes to the DVD. That is like an enhancement, and this is brought about by the enhancement. It's brought about by the freedom of the people to be able to bring in new technology, and they can change from the old ineffective technology to the current technology. So when emerging technology happens, it makes people be able to live in better ways. It promotes human life, like comfortable life for the human beings. It eases education, it eases business, it eases everything that the human being would love to use, and then makes this world a better world to live. That is basically what I understand by emerging technologies, and the whole topic, as I think I'll bring it in as we go deeper into the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hopkins, for that very elaborate understanding of emerging technologies. So let me give a chance to Sharif. So Sharif, it's time for you to give us your introductory statement to this debate. And my request is that you feature what you understand by climate justice in your introductory statement. So Sharif, you have the floor.
Yes, much obliged, Fancy. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Well, in today's debate, climate justice is a concept that addresses the just division, fair sharing, and equitable distribution of the benefits and burdens of climate change and responsibilities to deal with climate change. What am I trying to say? That in layman's language, climate justice is the equitable sharing of the burdens and benefits of climate change. For example, if our climate is being perturbed, let me say, by drought because of the wanton production of fossil fuels, each one of us on this planet, especially the youth, have a critical role to play we have an equitable role to play in ensuring that we combat that climate abuse. So in climate justice is hinged on very few, some of the principles as they were highlighted in the Mary Robinson Foundation. That one of them is that there must be respect and protection of human rights. Yeah, that you cannot claim that you want the youth to partake in observing climate justice when there's no observation of human rights. Yeah, first of all, people should be given their liberty to participate in climate justice. For example, the youth, they should be given an enabling environment to participate in climate justice. For example, the right to access to internet. Okay, it is very fundamental in this era that the youth should be given the right to access to internet so that they can ably participate in the research, in problem solving, and all other decisions that involve ensuring climate justice. Okay, and the other principle is that the benefits and burdens should be shared equitably. For example, if there's a burden that we should, as a world, find a way of mitigating the massive production of fossil fuels, it should be equitable and it should be a responsibility to each and every one, even the youth. Okay, so it is not only, it shouldn't be left to a particular set of people, let me say leaders or politicians or something like that. Each one of us has a critical role to play in ensuring that we have climate justice. Okay, so if there are benefits, for example, clean energy, yeah. So each one of us in the world should be given an opportunity to actually enjoy some of the benefits of clean energy. For example, the production of electric cars, those things, they should be, whoever is manufacturing those vehicles should ensure that they are equitably, shared in almost all parts of the world, because as a means of equitable sharing of the benefits of climate justice. Okay, and then the highlight of gender equality and equity, yeah, because you see, climate justice is hinged on the principle of gender equality and equity in such a way that the youth, regardless of their sex, should be given an opportunity to actually participate in ensuring climate justice. Yeah, for example, if you go to certain parts of the world, I will use this as an example. For example, in the Arabic world, whereby there are Sharia laws that a little bit suffocates the female gender in some of the decision-making platforms. This is a way. This in a way it limits the youth's participation in ensuring climate justice. In other words, what the principle is emphasizing that each and every person, regardless of their gender, should be given an opportunity to participate in ensuring climate justice. Yeah, and then the other one is that there should be a harness of transformative power of education for climate stewardship. What do I mean by this? In that the education systems that we have in the world should be directed towards climate justice. especially because you see the young generation has a critical role to play because they're the ones who believe here, who will be living here 30, 50 years after, after today. So there is a critical role they should play in ensuring climate justice in such a way that the education system should be directed towards climate justice. Right? For example, I'll use a basic example. Let me say, people were taught in mechanics, in vocational schools that people are taught how to operate these petrol engines, these diesel engines. But what this principle entails is that the youth, those in schools, the education system should be engineered towards, climate justice, towards clean energy. In other words, these people, instead of being taught how to operate those petrol engines, those diesel engines, they should be given an opportunity to learn coming up with clean energy engines, for example, electric cars. That should be the education system that people should be taught. For example, in construction of houses, people should be taught to use other, materials other than cutting down trees to make timber and all that. This should be inculcated through education systems of the world. That is one of the principles of climate justice. And then lastly, and most importantly, that there should be effective partnerships to secure climate justice. It is like I said earlier on, that we all have a critical role to play. We all have a responsibility towards our own climate justice. In other words, you cannot work as an island in combating climate change and everything like that. There should be effective partnerships. For example, if the United States of America could partner, let me say, with some organizations, let me say the UN on climate change, in such a way that we should have effective and concerted effort towards combating climate change. So generally, climate justice entails a fair distribution, an equitable distribution of both responsibilities and burdens when it comes to climate change. Yes, thank you so much, Francis.
Okay, thank you, Sharif, for that detailed introduction and your understanding about climate justice. Now, we would like to put aside emergency, to put aside climate justice as well as emerging technologies, and for now focus on digital rights. So talking about digital rights, let me start with you, Hopekins. Being a legal scholar, what is the legal framework in Uganda that governs digital rights?
Thank you very much for that question. Okay, the legal framework. Now, before I tell you the legal framework, I'm going to give you a background why there should be a legal framework. When there is digitalization, when there is internet, there is a situation where people are going to do good or bad. There is evil or good. So we have to protect the rights of the people at all times, whether it's on the internet, whether it's on online, or it is physically. So the laws that govern online and the real nature states are the same. That is why we believe that digital rights are good to be able to govern the usage of internet. Now, for example, the freedom of expression, that should not be, now I'm talking about the legal framework, that should not be anyone being stopped from using the internet because of their age, of their sex, gender, or of whatever they are, because there is freedom of expression. Then the freedom to access internet. Everyone must have the freedom to be able to use the internet for anything, because through the internet we get educated. For example, in the COVID-19 situation where the whole country almost was studying using the internet. So everybody has a right to access the internet so that they can run their businesses, they can emerge their technology, they can study. And that brings us to the right to education. Yes, the Constitution provides for all these rights. The right to education, because from digitalization, we are studying, we are getting educated, and therefore we are advancing. And mostly this is for the easement of human daily life. We ease human daily life, and that is why we have to have these rights. Now, there are these rights that are rights protecting us as human beings from people who may want to use the internet in an evil way. For example, child rights against pornography on the internet, cyber terrorism is protected because people have to use the internet without being attacked. There are copyright rules where no one has to copy your content, especially the textbooks that are put on internet. No one can like fabricate your content because it is yours and you own it. And basically that is the legal framework, and the legal framework comes to protect the people, and it is always for the people. And that is why we have it to govern the digital world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hopekins, for giving us the legal framework that governs digital rights in Uganda. Let me move to Garang. So, Garang, having listened to the legal framework, my question to you is, what is the current status of digital rights in Uganda? Is it something that is being respected? Do we have limitations? What is its current status?
Okay, thank you, Fancy. And I had a brief interruption, but I'm glad to be back. So currently there is a very interesting trend with regards to digital rights and all that is related to access to internet and access to gadgets that enable us to make work better. And the trend is that there is a systematic growth in how many people can access the internet, how many people can use the internet, and also there is also a very interestingly systematic growth also in how these internet gadgets are being used to simplify our ability to do things. For example, to do education, to deliver services like health services, to deliver services like security services, and to access goods and so many other things in terms of internet marketing and all that. So the trend is really, really interesting. And Hopkins has been going through the legal framework very interestingly, the laws that provides and what they provide for. And maybe, so the current or the status quo in relation to digital rights or digital innovation, it's a two-way sort of a thing between the negative and the positive. Because the positive is that we cannot run away from the use of internet to do the things that we want done. And the negative is, with the use of internet comes our exposure to so many things, including susceptibility to breaking the law in most cases. So that's why there are very strong limitations in how much we use our internet. I think we have seen a couple of incidences in the recent past where some individuals have become victims because of how much they use the internet and how much they engage online. So there are strong limitations, and personally, I think these limitations should exist because there is nothing good that is there without the regulatory framework and the control of how it is supposed to be used, so that it doesn't have negative implications on others. So the limitations that exist, like Hopkins was going through the legal framework, for example, the Computer Misuse Act. The reason why such an act exists is to regulate how we use our computers or how we engage on the internet, so that we don't end up harassing other people, so that we don't end up making life hard for other people in terms of subjecting them to emotional toils like depression because of some of the things that we do on the internet. So, those regulations are fundamentally important. But even despite the regulations, our online presence also is not something that is 100% okay, because with what the law has decided to sort of prevent or criminalize, under the Computer Misuse Act, there is a lot that also has not necessarily been criminalized, but has dire implications on people in terms of emotions and how they engage with them. For example, people can joke on the internet, but the magnitude of those jokes on people with fragile emotional stabilities can be dire and can lead someone to depression, and in the worst case scenarios, someone can even take their life because of what they were told on the internet. So this is one of the things that has become so common. And then also, secondly, there is the proximity with online crimes, in as far as piracy is concerned, related to copyrights, in as far as trafficking is concerned, in as far as scamming is concerned. People have crafted schemes that look really attractive, and they will ask you to share them, or they will ask you to engage with them. And that is how your data is taken, and then you become a victim at the end of the day, when you can't even tell why you have become a victim of something of the sort because of how you engage online. So the atmosphere online is very interesting to the extent that we know how to use it with our safety in regard. So, but if we sometimes approach it blindly, then it tends to put our safety at stake. Then also related to security and safety, trafficking has been prevalent. There are people who have been lured into schemes that look so nice to an extent that you even fix meetings, and before you know, you are a victim of human trafficking because of something that you just stumbled on, maybe on Twitter or on Instagram, or even on WhatsApp or Facebook, for example, and you thought it was good. So the trend is both good and bad, like I said, but the good would entirely depend on how much attention we pay to the bad. So in as much as we want to engage digitally, we need to be cognizant that with our engagement digitally comes with our susceptibility to these digital harms that come online. And we can't run away from it because, like I said in my opening, that is the trend. The trend is business is moving online. The trend is service delivery is moving online. We had I think we had 2 semesters online, and there was no difference between that and the semesters we have had, apart from the physical aspects. So many things are moving online. Service delivery is moving online. Right now you can access various services online, health services, security services. You can do so much of your bill payment online, and so many other banking and so on. So that means the only conclusion we draw is that the future is online. But in as much as the future is online, it is also as dangerous as it would be if it was even physical. So what we need to pay critical attention to are the silent dangers of online engagement, so that we can minimize them and maximize our engagement online. And as a result, we have the best outcome from the online engagement. And possibly that is the status quo related to digital rights. Fancy?
Okay, thank you, Garang, for giving us the status quo when it comes to digital rights in Uganda. Let me bring Sharif into the discussion on digital rights. So, Sharif, I would like you to start right from where Garang stopped on the issues of applying limitations to digital rights due to the different dangers associated with it. We have seen different laws come up. We have seen the UCC Act of 2013, Computer Misuse Act of 2011, Electronic Transactions Act of 2011, and other laws really that have come up to provide limitations to digital rights. My question to you is, do you think it's necessary to apply limitations to the digital rights?
Yes, thank you, Franz. Absolutely, I think it is right to apply limitations, because you see, Constitution Law 101, these rights are not absolute. Okay, for example, now national laws, except for a few rights, but most of the rights are not absolute. Therefore, in any reasonably justifiable and democratic society, there must be limitations on particular rights for the benefit of the society or something like that. However, to what extent should these rights be limited? Perhaps that could be a point of interest. Because you see, yes, the rights should be limited, but to what extent? Okay, in Uganda, I'll use it as a yardstick. These rights, there's a way the extent is exaggerated in a way that, especially politically, and during political peaks, political seasons in the country. For example, witnessed in the 2021 elections, whereby the internet was shut down for close to 3 days. Yeah, but why would such a thing happen? In a reasonably justifiable and democratic society. Okay, I understand. Yes, there must be limitations, but to what extent? Okay, because if you shut down internet, you're shutting down creativity, you're shutting down education, you're shutting down transactions, you're shutting down a lot of things going on in the country that actually development, to the society in that country. So I think, yes, there must be limitations, but to what extent should these rights be limited? Okay, and again, talking about limitations, there's a way these rights have been limited politically. For example, if you are a political personality in the country, there is a way your digital rights are going to be infringed upon on various occasions. We have witnessed one prominent politician, the party president of National Unity Platform, Robert Chagulanyi, saying on various TVs and radios that his phones actually they are tracked. Okay, his messages are they are tapped, they are wired. But why would you limit such a person's digital rights? I mean, he has rights to talk with whoever they want. He has a right to search on whatever he wants. He has a right to read. I don't think that the limitation should go to that extent. However much, yes, I agree there should be limitations, because you see, there's a lot of cyber crime that can happen if there are no limitations. Yeah, we have seen people being, conned online. We have seen those. I'll not mention the companies that normally do that, but we all know these companies that say that you get me 10 people, you'll be earning money you'll be earning these huge amounts of money in a day because you've wired people onto the internet. There are those fraud companies, and if there is no protection of the law, I am certain it would cause a lot of dire consequences to the country. So I agree that there must be limitations, such as the laws that you have cited earlier. The Computer Misuse Act. I think they're very, very important to protect the society, just like in any reasonably justifiable and democratic society. Yeah, because the rights are not absolute as given in our constitution. Just a few rights, I think 4 of them, they are absolute rights, but most of them can be curtailed in the best interest of the community. So yes, digital rights, just like other rights, should be curtailed, but the question should be to what extent, and the extent should be reasonable. Again, I would comment that the extent of limiting these rights should be very, very reasonable, as it is prescribed in a reasonably justifiable and democratic society. Because again, like I'll stress, without these limitations, we can really have dire consequences. We can really have a Pandora's box. People will be committing a lot of fraud. There will be a lot of, cyber crimes, and these are things that should be really curtailed by law. So I actually concur that there should be limitations on these digital rights for the benefit of the society. Back to you, Fancy.
Thank you so much, Sharif. So let me move to Hopekins. So Hopekins, we are discussing limitations to digital rights, and we have listened to several challenges come up from the panelists when the challenges that come with digital rights. My question to you is, how best can we handle those challenges so that the internet is safe for everybody?
I believe there are just 3 ways we can handle this challenge. First of all, through the government. Secondly, through the laws of the land, and through us, the people of the land. Now, why I'm going to explain why I'm saying this. First of all, the laws of the land have the limitations. They are written down, and I believe that they were put down for justifiable reasons. It's only when there is climate change that these reasons have to be changed or advanced. But if there is no climate change, they still conform with the current society, then these laws have to be followed appropriately without going against equity, without going against equality. We are looking at justice. If these laws are just, they have justice on them, they are equitable rights, then we are following them, as we are going to make sure that the country follows them. Now, secondly, as the youth or the people of the land, we have to get to know these laws. Let the people who already know the laws tell the others about the laws. And if these other people get to know about the laws, let us uphold these laws. Let everybody use the internet in the best way without infringing the rights of the others. So the government's hand is to make sure that everybody is able to use the internet. Everybody's rights are not infringed, and even the limitations themselves are used in the appropriate way. Therefore, when the government ensures this, then the challenges will be curtailed. That is where we shall achieve justice, equity, and equalization. Digital goes beyond internet. It goes to the health sector. It goes to the transportation sector. It goes everywhere. If the government can curtail and make sure that we use these rights well, we use this digitalization well, then we can be able to uphold and put up.
Thank you, Hopekins, for that submission. So let me move to Garang. Garang, let me give you the opportunity to wrap up that discussion on digital rights. And our center of focus today is on the youth. So what role can the youth play in to make sure that the digital rights are properly used?
Okay, thank you. That's a very interesting thing. So the youth are the biggest stakeholders in as far as digital use is concerned, and the use of internet, the use of computers and other gadgets to access internet and to engage on the internet. The youth are the biggest stakeholders, and whether or not we are safe on the internet, whether or not the rights are properly used, entirely depends on how the youth actually use the internet or use computers and other gadgets. So that's why it is critical that the role of the youth is boldly highlighted. And then, so this is what I think the role of the youth would be in as far as digital rights are concerned. Fundamentally, the youth need to first understand that digitalization has come to stay, and it is a part of the evolutionary process that we are all going through. It's a part of the wind of change that everybody is experiencing, and in that understanding comes the realization that it is incumbent upon us to use it to our very best, to accrue the most of the benefits from it, and to minimize any negativity that would result from it. So one, the role of the youth would be critical in as far as safety is concerned, because they are the biggest stakeholders. Whether you are the one perpetuating scam, trafficking, and harassment, whether you are the victim, and whether you know the victim as a youth, that your responsibility is to mitigate the impact of such things happening on the internet. So if you find someone being harassed on the internet, you may not want to play an active part in harassing, but perhaps in limiting such a person's access to that harassment. And also maybe you have to tell something to the ones that harass other people online. Then secondly, when it comes to even safety also. So we need as young people or as the youth to first equip ourselves with all the relevant information in as far as digital rights are concerned, that we should be able to know what our responsibility is when we are engaging digitally, what our obligations are, and what our rights are. So our rights, yes, we have a right to access, but that right comes with its limitations. And the limitations, like Sharif was talking about, you use that in a way that doesn't hurt another person, in a way that doesn't put another person into depression, in a way that doesn't expose another person to danger. So that is why critically what do we share and why do we share it becomes fundamentally important. That if you have access to information, you need to scrutinize it critically to know that, okay, this is worth sharing, or this is fake, or this is false, and then the implications of that are really, really concerning. So if we, the youth, have enough information about the use of internet and gadgets or internet gadgets, or if we have information that is enough about our digital rights, I believe that so many things, so many crimes that are internet-based, so many emotional toil that is internet-based can actually be mitigated. For example, trafficking that results online can be actually curtailed. Scamming can actually be curtailed. And also cyberbullying and cyber harassment could also be curtailed because everybody that is using the internet has enough information about it, has the ability to scrutinize and say, okay, this is about to expose them to harassment, or at what point are they about to harass other person, or at what point are they just simply having a casual conversation, or are they just humorously talking to other people. So if we are cognizant of those lines, and if all of us, or majority of us, are cognizant of those critical lines between when are we engaging in online humor and when are we harassing others, when are we sharing critical information, and when are we perpetuating fake news, or when are we doing what on the internet that is against the internet laws, then we will be critically using the internet for the very, very importance in which it exists. So the role of the youth, and also in abiding by the laws that have been put in place. For example, if you read the UCC Act, the regulation of media houses, or the regulation of whatever happenings online by the Uganda Communications Commission, if we all are equipped with what the Act says we can't do and how the Act wants us to engage with media online, then we'll be critical of what we are sharing. Even if we have access, we got false information, we will not just share it because we are aware what the law actually says about it. If you read about the Electronic Transactions Act, if we're aware of it, then we are able to know how to engage, how to make our online shopping and stuff like that. So if the youth, like I said in my introduction, who are the biggest stakeholders as far as online engagement is concerned, are equipped with digital information in relation to their digital rights, I feel the entire internet will be safer for everybody else, including for other stakeholders that are over and above the youth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lester. That concludes the discussion on digital rights, and we are moving now to emerging technologies. And earlier on, Hopekins was able to ably define it for us. And I would like to start with Sharif this time. So Sharif, talking about emerging technologies. So what is its current status in Uganda specifically?
Yes, thank you so much, Fancy. Well, the current status of emerging technologies in Uganda is actually is developing. Yeah, I can say that we are not yet fully there, but we are developing. For example, we have seen that actually Uganda has started manufacturing electric cars, the Kayola buses and everything. So it is there are indicators that actually we are doing very well, and we are work in progress. Because you see what are emerging technologies? Emerging technologies are those technologies whose development, practical applications are still, largely unrealized, and such in a way that they are figuratively emerging into prominence from the non-existence. In other words, these are technologies that are still emerging. Yeah. So in Uganda, we are, in terms of artificial intelligence, we have not yet reached there. Yeah. For example, artificial intelligence such as cyber security threat detection. Because you saw the other time that the president said that there should be trackers in each and every vehicles in Uganda. Okay. So we are moving towards those emerging technologies. For example, artificial intelligence. The president emphasized that for purposes of combating crime, each and every vehicle should have a tracking device, and this device should be connected to the government system, whereby vehicles are tracked. So that if you do a particular crime and you drive away, they can easily locate you And we are using, we are seeing that in Uganda, we are really a work in progress, though we haven't been there yet where we envision to be there. We still use the rudimentary systems of operation, you know. We still use the matatus, you know. We still use the borders, the traditional, the traditional, you know, Uganda. So I believe we are still a work in progress, but we shall be there because there is an enabling environment that is cropping up. Yeah, you know, for example, you see nowadays universities are moving towards online studying. Yeah, for example, here at Nkumba University, we did almost 2 semesters or 3 semesters online. So you see that the environment is enabling. It is encouraging students to go and to engage into these emerging technologies. You know, so I think because of the indicators such as the enabling environment, you know, the government policies. For example, these enabling factors such as the civic space, you know, the Center for Constitutional Governance, all these activities, they indicate that there's an enabling government for work in an enabling environment for work in progress. So in Uganda, the status quo is that we are work in progress. We have not been there, but we shall absolutely get there in the meantime. Yes, back to you, Fancy.
Okay, thank you so much, Sharif, for giving us a brief the status of emerging technologies in Uganda. So let me bring Hopekins into the discussion. So Hopekins specifically looking at the youth that is they are the subject of today's discussion. To what extent are the youth coming up with new technologies?
Actually, largely to the biggest extent. Okay, the larger extent, it is the youth that are coming up with these technologies due to the new research that is coming up. The youth are getting the research from the internet, and so they are exploring their minds into bringing up the new technologies. For example, the Kayola bus, I am sure it is the youth that have brought up that new technology. Looking at website building, most youth are website builders, especially if they are doing ICT at the university now. I'll give you an example of our own Vice Chancellor. While he was still 30 years, he built up a whole system of online studying, the one that we are using at Nkumba University, and he is the one that brought it into like existence. I don't know, should I say he developed the system, and that is one way to show that the youth are doing well in the digital, in the emerging technologies, but they only need to be financed, they need to be supported by the able companies, by the government, so that these technologies can go well, or they can really emerge as they should. Because looking at the person who first made an aeroplane, sadly, this person was exported to outside countries, and that's why Uganda doesn't have aeroplane makers. We instead buy them because we do not support the youth who come up with these ideas. The person who brought up how we can test for malaria, after bringing that testing malaria kit, she was taken outside country after a short while, and we don't know where she is right now. Because the government has not been able to support the youth, and yet the youth has interesting ideas that it can bring on table. But the emerging technologies are going to surely develop Uganda, and it is the youth that have the bigger parts in this.
Okay.
That's what I had to say.
Okay, thank you, Hopekins. Moving to Garang. Garang, I would like to ask you a question on something that you have argued about before. It's on enablers when it comes to emerging technologies. Do we have those necessary enablers to promote emerging technologies in Uganda?
Oh yes, thank you, Fancy. So emerging technologies, like technology is one of the most interesting ways that human beings have attempted to solve their own human problems. And technology has gone so far in addressing some of our challenges that sometimes I believe we would not have actually touched on them if we never had technology in place. So technology is a critical example of human success in as far as a continuous attempt to make this world a better place for themselves is concerned. So whether they are enabling, whether they are necessary enablers is a question of how we will look at technology in and of itself. And I want to be that person who looks at technology as a necessary evil in the very first place, because with the use of technology comes something that is potentially destructive if put to bad use. But if put to good use, it can do so many good. So the enablers of technology in Uganda are, they're not completely non-existent, but the ones that exist are kind of wanting. And this is because there is limited support that the able have for the unable. Majority of the people that are engaging in technological inventions and innovations, or the brains behind emerging technologies, are people that in most cases are either economically wanting or sometimes wanting in as far as their facilitation is concerned. So if they don't have access to funding, for example, to support in terms of technical know-how, then it becomes really hard for them to penetrate into the developing or the emerging technology aspect. So the enablers are there, but may not necessarily be the ones that we need or to the level that we need them to be. I know that's a very nuanced argument to make. You can't argue that something exists and at the same time argue that it doesn't exist. And that is exactly what I'm doing. So the point is, we don't have a zero. But just because we don't have a zero doesn't mean we can be proud of what we have. It simply means that we can always push harder to have what we need to have. And what is it that we need to have? So I'll be very specific in as far as these emerging technology aspects are concerned, especially in Uganda as a case study. When you look at the e-commerce, for example, in Uganda, the enablers for e-commerce, which is an emerging technology, are things to do with access to the internet, are things to do with the cost of internet in and of itself, and maybe thirdly, with the knowledge of the use of internet in and of itself. So internet data is very expensive, and that has become more of a necessity. I mean, at personal level, I don't think I can exist without internet. And that applies to all of us on this panel and to so many other young people out there, whether studying or working or what. So we need the internet to do our daily things, whether it is studies, whether it is business, or whether it is just having fun with our friends. So internet has become a necessity. So if internet is a necessity and it has become as expensive as it is, then there should be a hand that comes in to make it less expensive and to make it more accessible to the people that need to access it. And so if we have to engage in e-commerce, if we have to buy online and sell online, we need to be able to spend less on internet so that we can make more profits and then invest in online transactions and online commerce or e-commerce as it is happening. The second thing that is very, very critical and important is the mobile money, for example, the mobile money technology. Mobile money technology has been so revolutionary in terms of making business happen. It goes with internet or e-banking. E-banking and mobile money have come hand in hand, and sometimes people have argued that the mobile money just simply came to replace the banking system. But then there are things that banking does that mobile money can't do. So both things are going to exist. But for us to get the best that comes from these two, it needs us to have a lot to do with how much we use technology and how much we access technology. So if the cost of technology is still as high as it is in a country like Uganda, then we can't argue that it is enabling the environment. So the reason why people still engage in e-banking and maybe e-transaction or the mobile money industry and so many other things is because people have proved resilient. And it also speaks to the persistence of the idea in itself, that the idea of e-banking, e-commerce, and any other electronic transaction is that it is so much a necessity that we're willing to pay the price for it. So the only thing that we pay later is its impact on the overall economy. If people have to pay so much for something they can't do without, then it means the economy is sort of stagnant in the vast context. So the argument I'm trying to make is the enablers that exist need to be revisited again so that we can have a situation where we can spend less on the internet and then do more on the internet to then propel our economies. Because the contribution of internet transaction on the GDP is enormous. It's something that economies don't want to ignore. So if the government thinks this is important, then we should invest in making internet accessible and make it less expensive so that we can do more on the internet as a very critical enabler. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Garang. So moving to Sharif. So Sharif, starting from where Garang stopped on the necessary enablers, I know some of them came out from him, like the internet. So what are the other necessary enablers that we need as a country to be able to promote emerging technologies?
Yes, thank you, Fancy. Yes, like what my brother said, that one of the enablers is the internet, but again, the most important of all is policy. Policy, because you see it all roots from governance and leadership of this country. I understand that the current development model of the country is the parish development model is geared towards, you know, the agricultural sector and everything like that, trying to attract the youth into the agricultural sector. But I think the direction they are taking is not, you know, it is not compatible with generation at the time, because you see, like one of my colleagues said that most of the biggest so-called stakeholders in these emerging technologies are actually the youth, okay? And but the governance of this country is actually looking at things like this is 1980, you know, because now they are saying that the youth should, you know, should go and participate in agriculture, which is a good thing, but I believe they're not, you know, they are not producing a very conducive environment for the generation at the time, because you see, I think policy should be very important. For example, policy should be able to mitigate things like internet costs, because you see, one of the most expensive things in this country is the internet. Yeah, for a student or a youth to buy data of 10,000 on a daily basis to do, let me say, a research project or something like that, or try to, you know, do graphics designing, it is a little bit a pinch to the youth and a pinch to their development, because I think this is where now government should come in and come up with policy, you know, that enables the youth to actually participate in these emerging technologies, yeah? Because you see, even not only policy, but even participation of the youth in decision making, yeah, concerning these policies. Because you see, when most of the cabinet that makes decisions for this country, there are people who are above 50 or even 60 years and above. You get the point. These are people who grew up seeing things a little bit traditional, unlike the youth today, and therefore they make decisions basing on what they grew up seeing, which is, I believe, a little bit misleading. Yeah. So I think policy is very important, and how to start on that, they should include the youth in decision making. For example, we want to see a cabinet, a youthful cabinet of this country, yeah, whereby the youth actually share views of what a 2020 youth is actually expected to, you know, to do in this country. And that is, you know, participation in emerging technologies. So for me, my argument is policy is very important, and governance. Governance should be engineered towards these emerging technologies. One of my colleagues, I think it was Hopekins, she said that there's a lot of brain drain in this country. You see, if you come up with an idea of designing a smartphone, trust me, you will be, before you know it, there's these international organizations that will headhunt for you, and before you know it, you'll be flown to the US and you'll be working for, let me say, for Amazon or something like that. But this is because there is no enabling policies in the country that favor such brilliant youth, yeah, in participating these emerging technologies. So I think there should be policies that favor these youth, you know. For example, if I am a web designer, if we are graphics designer, there should be policies that actually recognize these youth who participate in these things, yeah. For example, in those, the people who are designing those Kayola engines, who are doing those solar panel buses, you see, these are youth who sit down and do their engineer, their mathematics and come up with these things, but they're not well represented in the governance of this country. For me, which I believe is very, very, very important, that decision making should involve the youth, and policy should be engineered towards, supporting, emerging technologies. Yeah, even in universities, the curriculum, it all comes with policy. There should be ministerial policy concerning emerging technologies in universities. Yeah, because as I speak now, there are course units that still teach rudimentary things. What is the social worker doing in this era of the world? You get the point. I'm not saying that social working is I see you're laughing there, Fancy, but with all due respect, I'm not undermining the course, but what I'm saying that most of the courses are actually not compatible with the generation at the time. Okay, but there should be a ministerial policy concerning these emerging technologies. For example, they should say that in every university, there should be a policy that each university, let me say on an annual basis, they should produce something, in reliance in yeah, yes, my brother Garang, it would be nice. For example, that in every university annually, it should produce something in relation to artificial intelligence. This is what other universities abroad are doing. Go to Harvard, students are coming up with artificial intelligence, cyber trafficking mechanisms, and these are just students at university. But you come to our universities, all we do better is graduate in education and other things. With all due respect, back to you, Fancy.
Thank you so much, Sharif, for that. And on the issue of social work, I won't comment. Let me bring Garang into the discussion. So Garang, when you look at Uganda right now, what are some of the challenges that we are facing as a country that technology could be a solution to?
Okay, thank you very much. I would want to comment on what Sharif said, but I think I will be more brutal than Sharif, so I'll just not comment. So there is a lot of things that technology can do for us as a country, because one, we are a developing country, and there's so many areas within which we shall need to be very, very innovative in terms of how we do things, and also in terms of how fast we want to get assistance for those particular things. One, with our existence in a developing world, and a world that is so much globalizing, we shall need to revisit how we trade with our neighbors, how we trade with our distant allies, and even how we trade with our enemies and foes, because it is very important that even if your enemy has something but you want it, you have to pay for it, you can pay for it and get it for you to move on. So we are going to need technology in how we trade, especially as a landlocked country that doesn't have access to the sea. I think we are going to have to make friends with people that have ports, like Kenyans, for example, Tanzanians and other countries, in terms of how we trade. So technology is going to be critical in as far as trade is concerned. And like I already said, that in the area of technology, e-commerce is already doing revolutions. So as a country, we may not need to wait until we are left behind, or until actually there's already evidence that we are deciding to wait until we are left behind, but that would be a very bad thing to do. So in terms of trading, we need to apply technology in as far as clearance of goods is concerned, in as far as security of goods are concerned. I mean, we need to be able to track our goods when they set off from China until they arrive at Mombasa, and you can be able to really track them on your phone or your laptop and know where they are, so that you can prepare. You can be able to monitor your goods in the warehouse, whether they are getting spoiled or not. These are the things that technology can really do for us. And I'm glad our friends at URA are already doing something like that. For example, right now, there's a whole system that enables you to even clear your goods even before they arrive, so that when they come, they don't have to waste time in the warehouse and so on. These are things that technology can really do for us. The second thing is access to health. Health services have become so important. Have they become? No, they have actually been so important. And technology is revolutionizing how we look at health and how we access health services. Right now, it is very possible that you can engage in a diagnostic sort of appointment with your doctor, because you have their contact. You can just WhatsApp them whenever you want and tell them, doctor, I think I have headache today. What should I do? And they tell you a couple of things that you can do to mitigate the greater impact of if your lifestyle was a bad thing that would make it hard for you. So in terms of access to health, in terms of how we make health more accessible to people. For example, if a lady needs maternity health, how do they get that in an era that is technologically revolutionizing? They just need to be able to monitor themselves, maybe using a smartphone application, for example. Our friends, the ladies, are already monitoring their menstruations as emerged as it is today. Then the other thing is fuel. For example, there is a global shift towards clean energy. I'm sure the next topic might be about climate justice. But the next area where technology might be important for us, for a country like Uganda, is in our access to fuel, for example, and power. So that the next shift is that we need to have access to cleaner power than we have always had. We are deserting fossil fuels. We are about to extract our oil, but the world is shifting to clean energy. So how do we emerge where the world is and where we are coming into as a country in terms of how we access fuel is going to demand that we invest so much in developing our technology atmosphere, so that we can be able to do things like that, and so many other things like insurance. We need to move past the era where you have to see a doctor and then you have to pay so much and all that. We need to outsource some of these costs so that maybe insurance companies, like health insurance companies, can really pay for them, and the only thing we do is to simply fix a couple of appointments and stuff like that. So I know these are things that sound so delusional, but that is where the world is going to, and a country that is developing. These are things we need to pay critical attention to, and so many other aspects where technology is important, even in education. I think there is a need to transition from the traditional way of educating. The other day I came across a very interesting tweet, and someone was saying that they have learned more than they would have learned if they were in a university by just being on Twitter and social media. And I think I alluded to that when I started, that how you use social media can make you a better person. So technology is becoming so important in as far as education is concerned, that you can self-educate yourself. You can learn practically any skill because you have access to technology. If you wanted to cook, you don't need to go to school for catering. You just have to maybe go to a YouTube channel and get recipes and start cooking. If you wanted to code, you can just go online. There are so many online-based coding academies where you can actually learn computer programming without having to be in a class or without having to pay so much in terms of tuition fees and all that. So you just need to buy your data and sit on your laptop and learn how to code, and you become a computer programmer. There is need for technology for us to transition to all these things, to these opportunities. And these are opportunities that we direly need as a country that is still developing, as a country that's still having problems with poverty and so many other things. So to address these challenges, we need to tap into the emerging technology world, and then as a result, then make ourselves better at the end of the day. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lester. Sharif, my last question to you on the topic of emerging technologies regards the youth that you are looking at today. So how can the youth, how does the youth come in all this? How do they contribute to emerging technologies?
Yes, yes, thank you so much. I think how the youth can contribute is through their creativity. Yeah, I think the youth should go ahead and come up with their creativity, just like how they have always been doing it. Because you see, even if there's no enabling environment for you, you have to create your own enabling environment. Yeah. So I believe, yes, the youth should continue being creative. Yeah, let them publish, whatever they come up with. If you're a web designer, I think they should go ahead and be creative in whatever they're doing. For example, if you're a mechanic, I would again encourage creativity. Do not be ordinary. So I think the youth can be involved in emerging technologies through embracing the art of creativity. Working together as youth. because you see, we are the largest population in this country, and it is very important that we should use that as an opportunity to, maximize our involvement in emerging technologies. Because like I've already said, or like what I said earlier on, that this future belongs to the youth. The people who are making for us policies, these who are not, producing this enabling environment will not be here 30, 50 years from now, but the youth will be there. So I think it is up to them to take up the mantle, and be involved in emerging technologies, you see, because I think it doesn't take a lot of sacrifice to come up with something that has never been there. I've seen in movies, especially the acting industry, the movie industry of this country. I see the youth are taking a center stage. If at all you've been following what has been transpiring, in the music industry, you see the videos they make. There's a lot of creativity that is going on. So I believe all that is how the youth are involving themselves in emerging technologies. You see, these electric cars, these solar panel cars, there's a lot of creativity that is going on. If you go down to Chiseka Market there in town, you'll find that there's a way these youth they modify these matatus, these borders. You see someone driving a matatu with these gears, these crutches, and then there's a lot of creativity, So I believe the youth should involve themselves in emerging technologies through embracing technology, through embracing creativity, and working together as a team. Because I believe there is a collective bargaining when you work as a group of youth, unlike when you sit down in your room and come up with something and at the end of the day doesn't see the light. So I believe the youth can get involved in these emerging technologies through creativity, working together. There's a lot of those those youth circles. Yes. So in a way, we shall be there. Back to you, Fancy.
Okay, thank you, Sharif, for that. I would like us to now transition into climate justice, which is the last topic that we are discussing today. Earlier on, I asked Sharif to give us his understanding of climate justice, and if I could just briefly paraphrase his definition, where I would like us to transition into climate justice. And earlier on, I asked Sharif to define for us, according to his own understanding, what climate justice means. And if I could paraphrase it, he talked about it as equitable sharing of benefits and burdens of climate change. And I would like us to have that discussion at this time. And I'll start with you, Lester. So, Lester, as a country, where are we now in terms of climate justice?
Okay, thank you, Fancy, again. I think where we are as a country is a very critical position, and as far as climate justice is concerned, because the policies that seem to be in place in as far as climate is concerned or climate justice is concerned are policies that not necessarily that are more of a formality than they are of what they are meant to be. Because you see, if you have bodies like NEMA, for example, that are supposed to manage environment and how we deal with environment, because you can't speak about climate without involving environment, because it is how we deal with our environment, how we engage with it on a daily basis, that determines whether or not we are going to have implications on the climate or not. You look at areas to do activities like deforestation, for example, activities like wetland encroachment, for example, activities like how we the kind of fuels that we use. These are the things that show how we are dealing with our environment, and as a result, those will have implications on our climate at the end of the day. So, looking at climate justice as something to do with the way we engage with climate and how we benefit from that and how we get harmed by that again, it's over and beyond that. So the reason why I say the position within which we exist as a country is critical is because we are aware that we are harming the environment, and by extension, we are endangering the future of our climate. But two, we are doing so little to make sure that we control how much we are harming the environment, and at the end of the day, how much that will have implications on the climate. And there is no evidence to show that we are transitioning towards any better future in as far as climate justice is concerned. So it becomes really critical at a juncture like this, because look at how forest reserves are being dealt with. There have been so many loud cries from environmentalists in how we are dealing with reserves like Mabira forests, and how we are dealing with other places like wetlands, maybe like swamps and all these other things. And there has been a consistent portrayal of backlash from the environment through climate change alone. We remember the floods in Bududa. We are aware of the scorching sun these days. Kampala used not to be as hot as it is today. And Entebbe used not to spend like a month without rain. But right now we can go 2 or 3 without rain. Right now it is extremely hot. So we are already seeing the implications of climate change. And by extension, we are seeing the implications of our actions in the climate. So the juncture within which we are as a country is a critical one, because we are doing little to address the climate change issues that have already shown that they are not good. We are still cutting down the forest. We are still not transitioning to clean energy, for example. For example, I think more households use charcoal than they use gas for their fuel. But if people use more charcoal than gas, it means people are cutting down more trees than sourcing fuel from any other sources. And the more we cut these trees, the more we deforestate, the more we remove the existence of forests, and at the end of the day, we're going to harm the environment, and climate change will become a friend of ours, like it is for so many other countries that have seen that coming. So the juncture is critical. The future is not promising, and if we want to do anything, then we need to act as fast as we can, so that we can control some of the things that sponsor climate change. So that we can maybe do more foresting instead of cutting down of forests, so that we can transition to clean energy, so that we don't have to always use charcoal, for example, on all those things. And I make such arguments with painful realization and knowledge or cognizance that we are poor people, and as poor people, we are bound to use what we have. So if someone can't access gas for cooking, for example, and they can access charcoal, they are going to use that. So there is a silent implication of poverty, or the overall poverty, on how we deal with our climate, our environment, and by extension, how that affects the climate. So as a country, it is a very critical position. Now, this is how complicated it looks when I just look it at face value. That the way we deal with our environment, and by extension, the way we deal with our climate, is inclined or badly hinged on our economic position as a country. That if we are a poor country, a developing country, we are bound to consistently destroy our environment to sustain our survival, and we will always engage in unsustainable environmental policies to do that. And everybody else, like what NEMA does or any other policy, is just ceremonial, and it's a by the way. So, but the real implication is the position we are in is a pretty bad one. Fancy.
Okay, thank you, Lester. Sharif, in Uganda, as we know, the level of poverty is very, very high. So how do we promote climate justice in an environment where there's so many poor people?
Yes, thank you so much, Fancy. I think the question is pretty simple, okay? Because if you say that in order to observe climate justice, we must not have such levels of poverty, then I think the first element should be to deal with the poverty levels. Yeah. So I think government should find a way of eradicating some of these levels, these poverty levels, because like you said, they are very they are a very contributing factor to climate abuse. Because like someone said, you find that most of the people who stay in the slums actually those who are being who are heavily impoverished, that in a way that they can't afford decent accommodation. So I think the first step should be to deal with such poverty levels. Yeah. For example, like what government is doing, the parish development model. Let the youth participate in various activities, that can eradicate such poverty. For example, you see, and another thing is that poverty is a mindset. Okay, so I think there is a lot to do with massive sensitization on how people can actually relieve themselves from such poverty levels. Because again, however much you have the best policies, however much you have the best laws, however much you have the best organizations, however much you have the best law implementing agencies like NEMA, like what my brother Garang said, when actually the root cause of the problem is poverty, like how you correctly highlighted. I believe that all steps should be taken towards eradicating such poverty levels, so that people do not have to construct slums in swamps. Yeah, that cause flooding in the cities. That people do not have to cut down trees and use charcoal. Yeah, because we all know the implication of because we all know the implication of having charcoal of cutting down trees to use charcoal. But if the poverty issue is a little bit mitigated, then when people can afford gas, when people can actually afford decent accommodation, just like it is in the second world countries or the first class world countries, I think we shall be then able to fight climate abuse. Because you see, you cannot tell someone to mind about climate justice when actually they literally have nothing to eat. They actually lack the basics of life, such as shelter, accommodation, clothing, healthcare, and actually food. Because when you say that poverty levels are really bad, that is what it means, that people actually lack the basics of life. So there's no way you can have such a population geared towards ensuring climate justice. It is literally impossible and a fallacy. So I think the first thing should be to deal with poverty eradication. Yeah, when people actually up to that stage where they can observe climate justice, then we shall be able to to effectively combat climate abuse. It's back to you, Fancy.
Okay, thank you, Sharif. Moving back to Garang. So Garang, let's talk about the issues of development versus environmental justice or climate justice. We have had scenarios where wetlands have been given out for industrialization, planting sugarcane to supply industries that produce sugar and so forth. So on one hand, we have development. On the other hand, we have protection of climate justice. Now, my question to you is, given a position of authority, how would you resolve that dilemma?
Okay, so thank you. The question of development is a very critical question, and we cannot simply just disregard the contribution of development, because I think that our very existence as human beings is hinged on development, that we have to continuously improve. We can't remain the same and claim to be existent. That's why the humans of today are different from the humans of the recent past, in terms of centuries ago, and we are bound to be different with those of tomorrow. So development is a very important aspect of our existence as a people. But with that in mind comes the question of the implications of our drive towards development on our world, on Earth, on climate, on environment. So the point we need to make is that we need to change our approach towards development. We need, because one thing is constant, that we don't have another planet that we shall migrate to. We don't have another country that we shall leave. Tomorrow, if Uganda becomes unbearable, we cannot move from Uganda and go somewhere. So that means this is a constant. So what do we have control over? The only thing we have control over is our development metric. So the development metric need to be informed by the need to protect the environment. That for me is the very first thing. that in position of authority, I would think like someone who makes decisions from a position of understanding that we have a permanent planet, one. Two, we have a permanent country, and whether or not we are developing, these things will not change. So what can we change? The only thing we can change is development models. And the development models we can change is we need to have models that are cognizant that we are about the climate and about the environment. So what are these sort of models? I think that is the question that should be answered right now. So first thing we need to understand is development should be sustainable. We have heard of the famous sustainable development. Everybody thinks about it, sustainable development. But what critically informs sustainable development? Sustainable development is development that puts into consideration the needs of the present without jeopardizing the needs of the future generation. So if we have to make sugar, for example, if we have to engage in plantation, we don't have to destroy wetlands so that the people of tomorrow no longer have rain or they no longer have the sugar plantations that we have. So what the point is that if we can, if it depends on how much areas we want to give away and how much that implication is. It is not true that if we completely, it's not true that we are forced to choose between the environment and development. It is very possible that we can do both, that we can have both the plantations in the wetlands and also without jeopardizing the existence of wetlands. And I think this has been shown by the road industry. For example, I know context is very different, but if you look at the transportation industry, they have invented to an extent that a road can pass through a swamp without causing the non-existence of the swamp in and of itself by creation of bridges and stuff like that. So we can have the same thing in how we grow, we establish plantations. We can have reserves that cannot be tampered with regardless of what. That a country like Uganda can have reserved wetlands that no matter what cannot be given away, but sadly this is not the case. So the idea is we need to implement sustainable development models that do not destroy the environment, models that still make us achieve the benefits of environment at the end of the day. Secondly, climate justice also entails that demand, and I think I am so careful when I use the word demand, that we have a right as a developing world to demand assistance from the developed world, because some of the things we are facing that come from climate change are simply implications of the activities of the developed world when they were still developing. That countries like America, countries like France, countries like China, and other countries that are developed because they engage so much in destroying the environment. And that's why today we are facing these challenges. That for America to develop, they had to exploit their oil industry. They had to invest in their coal industry. And these are the things that result to carbon emissions. So when time comes for us to address the implications of climate change, we should have a moral authority to demand them that they contribute to the climate justice, to the climate justice campaign. That we have to reduce carbon emission. We may not be expected to cut our carbon the same way America would cut, because there was a time when America was not being limited, or there was a time when China was not being limited, for example, or the UK, or so on. So that in itself should inform the authority, the policies that we make, that the deals we enter into with development partners must be informed by the need to remind them that they have a moral obligation to contribute to our ability to control climate change, because they contributed to the beginning of the climate change in and of itself in the very first place. So that means our development models need to be informed by that. Our development partnerships with these other countries need to be informed by making them understand their very position in as far as dealing with climate is concerned. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Lester. That was a brilliant way of handling the question on the issues of development versus protection of the climate or climate justice. So let me move to Sharif. So Sharif, you listened to, I hope you listened to the submission by Lester, and my question to you is, would you handle the issue of development versus climate justice the same way, or do you have a different approach?
Yes, thank you, Fancy. I absolutely concur with my brother Garang, because you see, climate justice does not necessarily mean that development should be discarded. You know, I think that is misleading. However, then development should be tailored in a way that it suits, you know, it suits climate justice, just like what my Garang said. You know, you see, in these developed countries, there's development that there is this narrative that development actually happens longitudinally and not latitudinally. What do I mean? Instead of, you know, cutting down forests to occupy more space, you could actually, let me say, construct these skyscrapers. You know, you get the point, so that you minimize the forestry destruction in the country. Yeah. So you don't need to cut down, you know, mass chunks and chunks of forest for you to have space to do your development. Let me say those large scale kind of industries. Yeah, you could just have skyscrapers, you know, underground basement kind of operations that you do not have to don't have to have development going, you know, latitudinally, but rather longitudinally. In other words, you develop a system that works, you know, above the ground. Yeah. For example, that's why people are constructing those flyovers. You know, they are, you know, like our what, this Entebbe Express, you know, highway, whereby you do not have to, you know, to encroach on the swamps for you to have, you know, roads go through or something like that. You just need to think through of development, especially infrastructure development, in a longitudinal manner and not in a latitudinal manner. So I concur with my brother that yes, development should happen, but however, it should be tailored towards, you know, climate justice, because you cannot say that yes, you're manufacturing cars and you're manufacturing these traditional, you know, petrol cars or diesel cars, and then you're saying that, you know, you're and when the climate justice campaign comes towards you, say that you know, climate justice is against development, because your development is not tailored towards climate justice. But for example, the massive production of electric cars is tailored towards climate justice. So in other words, development should happen, but it should be tailored in such a way that it is compatible with climate justice. I don't know if you get my point. So that is what I'm trying to communicate, that I concur with my brother Garang, that yes, development should happen, but however, it should be tailored in a way that suits climate justice, not the other way around. Back to you, Fancy.
Okay, thank you, Sharif. Let me get back to Garang. So Garang, I would like to ask you a question on something that you hinted on in your earlier discussion, and that is on other countries such as USA, France, China, as well, destroying the environment, or, you know, doing the opposite when it comes to promotion of climate justice. And I would like to ask you, so how do we promote climate justice at an international level, given the different challenges that come with international law?
Okay, thank you. I think that's a very, it's a very critical judge to have at a time like now, when nations are becoming more hegemonic and also more radically capitalistic. The latter is critically important, because capitalism as a concept has transitioned beyond just how it used to be. It has become so radical to an extent that countries do not pay attention to the implications of the capitalistic move towards enrichment of their economies and so on. That's why countries like America have a policy of American interest, for example, that the interests of America should come first, even if the global interest is at stake. That if the climate is at stake, if climate change is destroying worlds and global warming is doing stuff and ice is melting in the poles of the earth, that in such a context, again, American interest has to come first. That, I think, is a very unfortunate way of policy making for countries that are so powerful like America is. So in an international world that is becoming hegemonic, that is becoming radically capitalistic, it becomes so hard for people to still make arguments for things that are so silent as climate, as environment, because environment doesn't have power of its own to advocate for its own respect. That trees or forests or rivers or seas or the air in and of itself will not stand up for itself to be protected like any other species. So that becomes so hard. That it is supposed to be some people who have seen these dangers that should advocate on behalf of this of the climate, and that is what makes it extremely complicated. So when the climate decides to fight back, the people that face the heat from the climate are the people that contribute the least. For example, the global south contributes the least to climate change, but when at the end of the day, they are paying the heaviest price. Like the flooding that has been going on in countries like Madagascar, for example, and whatever is happening in South Africa as we speak today, that the implications of that, those are the direct implications of climate change. But the world that actually does the most emission, for example, is the global north, that is extremely developed to an extent that they are beyond the touch of climate change. That if it is too hot for them, they have air conditioners. That if it is too cold, they deal with it the same way. That if there are people that can stay indoors for an entire month and there is no problem with that. But for us who are living a hand-to-mouth life, you can't stay inside for actually a day and you don't starve, you don't go out to hustle. So that means the implications of climate change are badly distributed in terms of development. So it is hard to convince countries that are that powerful to respect the climate because they don't feel the pinch. So the biggest question right now is, in an international context that is this selfish and hegemonic, how do we still make a case for the respect of climate change? I'm going to make a very radical argument, and I don't know how it is going to be possible, but I want us to just think about it. So just close your eyes and think about a situation where climate or environmental features like rivers, lakes, forests, and trees have the same right as human beings and maybe states, to an extent that if their rights are violated, they would have an independent legal personality to sue people that violate their rights. For me, that is when I think we shall have a case for the environment. That if Mabira Forest is being cut down and it enjoys a separate legal personality, that it can sue the people that do those things at its own personal level, I think that is something that would be able to make it. That if countries that emit more are compelled by international organizations to contribute the most in remedying situations where countries like South Africa or Madagascar or any other country that are facing floods, then they would be forced to then conform to the respect for the climate. So if these fishers have rights and legal personality, then it would become very easy for rivers to sue people that dump uncontrollably. It becomes easier for forests to sue people that cut down their trees without replacing them. It becomes very easy for environmental groups to actually defend them at that capacity. So if that happens, there would be a semblance of change that countries like America can make policies without just American interests, but also the interests of America when they have to contribute to the finances of climate mitigation, for example. So if a powerful country is compelled at the end of the day to contribute substantially to remedying or mitigating the impact of climate change in weaker economies of the global south, for example, then they would feel an economic pinch. And as a result, because they are capitalistic, like I say, they would then have policies that are cognizant of these things. So this is a question of international regulation, and that comes in an aspect of international law. And you see, international law is also very flawed in a way of enforceability. That even if such laws are made, enforceability would still become a problem. But as an optimist, we would rather struggle with enforceability than struggle with the non-existence of the laws itself. So I would make an argument that let's first make them laws to exist, then we shall think about enforceability when they have existed. So that is some area that I think we need to venture in critically. Yeah, thank you. Fancy.
Thank you, Lester, for that brilliant submission. Sharif, my last question to you now regards the youth. So what role can be played by the youth when it comes to promotion of climate justice?
Yes, thank you, Fancy. Yes, like I said, that the youth, first of all, need to understand that it is upon them, it is an obligation, it is a responsibility towards them to ensure that there is climate justice, because like what my brother Garang said, that if we wake up one day and the earth does not exist, it will be the youth who will suffer the most, because they will have no future. So I think they need to understand that they have an obligation to participate in climate justice or the climate justice campaign. So one of the ways on how they can do that, firstly, is through participating in the emerging technologies, like you said earlier on. Yeah, they should participate in the formation and production of clean energy. Yeah, they should participate in the advocacy for climate, climate justice. They should actively participate in decision making. They should struggle to be represented in all decision making forums, yeah, both nationally and internationally. For example, because you see, like I said, the mantle lies upon them. The people who are running these countries at the time, at the moment, they will not be there 30, 50 years from now. You get the point. But the youth, the people who are 25 years and below, 18 years and below, these are people who exist even long before these people are born. So I think they should understand that responsibility, that it is their future, yeah, and they should advocate for climate justice. They should participate in these emerging technologies, artificial intelligence. They should participate in all things that advocate for climate justice, because like again, I've always emphasized that it is their future, and they have a mandate to make sure that they participate in climate justice. So they can participate in, first of all, acquainting themselves with the knowledge surrounding climate justice. Yeah, because you cannot campaign for what you don't understand. Okay, do they understand what is climate justice? They understand what is clean energy. I think they should invest time in understanding these concepts. Yeah, they should invest time in advocating for these concepts, both nationally and internationally. Yes, I have seen various organizations, youth organizations concerning climate justice. And I believe it's a good move, because they are taking up the mantle to lead most of their colleagues in the country. So they should first acquaint themselves with information concerning climate justice. What is, the greenhouse effect? What is the effect of these fossils in relation to climate change? So I think those are one of the things that the youth should actually do in order to participate in ensuring climate justice in the country. Back to you, Fancy.
Thank you so much, Sharif. That was a brilliant submission on the contribution of the youth, or the role that youth can play when it comes to climate justice. And in summary, Sharif is telling the youth that if only you knew, you would be very, very active in all these things, because you are the future of this country. So thank you so much for that brilliant submission. We have come to the end of our debate, and I would like to give the panelists an opportunity to give us closing statements or closing remarks. And I'll start with you, Lester.
Okay, thank you, Fancy. Thank you, viewers and listeners. It's been a very interesting conversation on the things that really matter to us as young people, and maybe as people in a world that is inherently disenfranchised and predominantly developing. We face a lot of challenges that require policy. We face a lot of challenges that require our own intellectual investment, and sometimes time investment, and sometimes making of a couple of sacrifices. And as a people, I think that the best we can do for ourselves and for our world is to not ignore these challenges, to do our best in terms of addressing them. So my conclusion to everybody that has been following this conversation is that no one is too young or too dumb to engage in national conversations or even global conversations. And a choice to turn away from these pertinent issues is a choice to maybe, by implication, act suicidal, because the implications of these things are going to affect all of us at the end of the day. But even if it is just a word, even if it is just a piece of advice that you give someone out there, that makes your contribution to making this world a better place. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Lester. Let me move to Sharif.
Yes, yes, thank you so much, Fancy, our moderator. I want to thank you so much for this opportunity. I want to thank my fellow panelists for making sure that we have this very interesting engagement. And I also want to thank the audience for, saving this time and listening in to what we are actually sharing here. However, my conclusion will be very brief, precise, and straight to the point that actually the youth should understand that, it is their future, and that it is high time that they participate in such conversations like what my brother Garang said. Yeah, because you see, for example, in these unnecessary wars that are going on in the world, it is the old people who make who make the orders. It is them who actually engineer these wars, but it is the youth who fight in these wars and die in these wars. So, but if we chose up and took up our future, I think it would be very, very important. And one of the steps is actually involving ourselves in such conversations, problem-solving conversations. So I think the youth should take up the mantle in participating in the emerging technologies, in campaigning for climate justice, because it is their future and not anyone else's future. The digital rights, they should advocate for their digital rights. They should claim for digital rights, because these are rights that are not given on a silver platter. Because for us in law, we say that rights are never given at free will. You have to demand them. So I think it is high time the youth wake up and actually start demanding for their digital rights, because it is their future. They start participating in the emerging technologies. They start advocating for climate change as a united force of youth. Because if we do that, I am quite sure that we shall have a very befitting future and a very wonderful future. Yes. Thank you so much, Fancy.
Thank you so much, Sharif, for that. I would like to thank the panelists that we have had today from Nkumba University. That is Garang, Lester, Hopekins, Ainomujuni, and Ssebina, Sharif. Thank you so much for being with us, for being very, very articulate. I would like to say I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know that the viewers out there were able to also enjoy this conversation. So this is Inter-University Debate, and it is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. It airs every Thursday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Civic Space TV on YouTube. But we are at the level where the universities are preparing for the quarterfinals. And therefore, the universities are holding their internal debates to prepare and select that very eloquent debater who will represent them on the panel during the inter-university debate at the stage of quarterfinals. And today we have had Nkumba University, and I know out of these debaters, one person will represent Nkumba University, and hopefully they will be able to proceed to the next round, depending on how they compete and during the quarterfinals. So from me, thank you so much for participating. Thank you so much, the viewers, for watching. Thank you so much, Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV, for organizing this engagement. And I would like to say bye. See you again next week, same time with another university. Bye.